Hey, welcome back to the show. It's Jeff. Well, today's episode is with Deputy Matt Thomas of the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. And this one I really enjoyed this one for a couple of reasons. One, killer topic. Deputy Matt wrote a book called Interceptors, the Untold Fight Against the Mexican Cartels. And I mean, who doesn't want to hear about those stories? But what I really wanted to do was shift focus with him and have him share more things than he may normally share when he's talking about his book. I wanted to dig in to a couple things about his long career, about his 29-year marriage. I mean, how cool is that? And Deputy Matt goes into a lot of specific details and some tactics on how you can manage some high-pressure situations in your own life. So dig into this one, get out a piece of paper if you can, and take some notes, or if you're in the car, listen to it again. I appreciate the extra notes. So enjoy Deputy Matthew Thomas. It's not about the talent you have, but the mindset you bring to it. Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant, hands down, has to be considered one of the most elite athletes to ever walk the earth. Why? Was it his athletic ability? Possibly. But for me, it was the mindset and the willingness to prepare better than anyone else is truly what made him elite. Today, our student athletes are facing challenges that haven't ever been seen before. So much social media, actively having to market themselves, the transfer portal, NIL, goes on, and not to mention they have to keep their grades up. Winging it and just seeing what happens is not the strategy needed, but it's what most athletes, coaches, and parents are using. You have to be intentional. You have to invest in skills that scale with life. With this highly competitive environment, how do student athletes separate themselves from the crowd? Be elite. Apart from having athletic statistics and grades, what does this mean? Well, let me introduce you to the Elite Edge 90-Day Program. The Elite Edge 90-Day Program is designed to assist the student athlete to develop the mental performance to have the self-discipline, self-awareness, and focus necessary to navigate internal and external challenges. The program will also assist in developing a real specific plan that will help them achieve their own individual goals. Each athlete will also be able to communicate their mission, vision, and values that make them unique. Imagine how this will be received when they are looking to differentiate themselves during the recruiting process. What will be learned in these 90 days can be used for the rest of their lives. This is scalable. I'm offering the Elite Edge program live or virtual, and one-on-one, group, or team options are available. So reach out today to learn more about the Elite Edge 90-Day Program and Highlight Coaching and Consulting. Yeah, so you were talking about meeting up with some lifelong friends based on your message and not expecting to hear other people's stories.
Right. And then people who I've met through social media who I consider just inspirational, having a great story and just great human beings. And they'll turn around and tell you how you inspired them. And it's humbling. And you kind of think like, how in the world can I inspire you? And then you really, that's where you learn the power of social media, because it's not all just about doing stupid dances and getting more followers. It's giving people a peek into your life. And of course it's a filtered life, because I try not to do the doom and gloom, because I see plenty of bad in life. And I just try to have fun and enjoy myself and just be the goofy person I am. And it's cool when you just connect with random people. And like you said, some of them, man, you just become like they're your people, and all of a sudden your tribe just gets bigger.
Yeah, for sure. Well, at some point I want to hear the minigun stories, because I see several pictures of those. That looks like that is beyond fun, just to mash that button and go.
Dude, the minigun is that is and I'm in a very blessed spot where I have access to people who own miniguns, and I get to go out and shoot them sometime. And you don't realize how blessed you are until you talk to people, especially like, dude, there's some lifelong military guys that are like, bro, get me on that minigun. And I'm sorry, man, like it's not mine. And even my son, my 14-year-old son has been up on the minigun. And I told him, you have no idea how special this is, man. There's a lot of people that would love to do this.
Yeah, that's cool. I've got a son that's 14.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yep. So you know.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to give everybody some background. So you're Deputy Matthew Thomas. You're the XO of the Sheriff's Department in, is it Pinal County? Is that how you pronounce it? And
Pinal
which
County.
is in Florence, Arizona, right? That's the area.
That's our main station is in Florence, but we're basically matched right in between Phoenix and Tucson, if
Okay.
Geographically for people.
Okay. And you've done a ton in your 29 years of service. So thank you to you and your family for doing that, because I know it's not just you that
no,
goes
I
through
do
the stress.
I do the easy stuff, as I think military guys will tell you too. You know, we do what we consider the easy stuff. The family pays the price for this career.
Right. And then your wife, Susie, that we talked about, of 29 years. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Thank you.
3 kids.
Oh, I know. Yeah. It's not often you talk to guys with this many years on that have the same wife that they started with.
Yes. Well, regardless of what they do, 29 years
Right.
with one woman is not common much anymore. So
she's my angel.
yeah, that's awesome. And in your role as XO, that you oversee 650 plus employees, you've done, it looks like every single thing that the sheriff department has. Is that correct? Other than fly helicopters?
Yeah. I've actually flown our helicopter for a very, very brief moment. But yeah, I've done pretty much everything. There's a couple duty stations that I haven't done, but if you look at my resume, you can tell very quickly that I have ADD, and I have to bounce around a lot. So I've done a lot of stuff. Yeah.
But the longest tenure, it looks like 18 years on the SWAT team. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was 18 years. I started as what we refer to as an operator, just a basic, SWAT dude. And then I moved up into a team leader position once I got some tenure. And then ultimately I ended up second in command of the SWAT team for a while and moved into the commanding position. So I held command of the SWAT team. And then when I promoted into this position is when I left the SWAT team and had to retire because I can't do that job in this job.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess it's you would put yourself too much at risk, and you've got too much.
Well, and it's just I wouldn't do it any justice because the time involved, it would be too much of a time requirement for both jobs. So one would suffer.
Right. Okay, that's good to know. So husband, father, those are probably the two primary things you want to be known as.
Yeah.
And you're now an author. So your book Interceptors. It's the Untold Fight Against the Mexican Cartels, which is a gripping title. So that's a great job on your part picking a good title.
Thanks, man.
And that came out in November, correct?
Yeah. I released it in November. It hit the shelves. We made bestseller, which was that was really my goal coming out of the shoot. I wanted to hit some bestseller spots, and I got those. And now we're just trying to spread the message because I think it's, well, like it says in the title, it's the untold fight. So I think it's a story that needs to be told because I work with a lot of great men and women that put their lives on the line and did a lot of great work that nobody knew about.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about being an author, and that's why people need to tell their story. Because you talked a little bit about probably imposter syndrome that you had before you wrote it of, well, why should I tell my story? Like what kind of things did you battle before you actually decided to actually write the book and start writing the book?
I think one of the biggest things I battle, and it's probably most humans, is, am I good enough, right? Why would somebody listen to me? Because, my career is my career. Everything I've done is what I've done. But I've just done my job. And so it doesn't seem like anything special to me. It's just stuff I've done. I've had a lot of fun. I've been in a lot of cool assignments and done a lot of cool stuff. And so I thought, well, yeah, they're cool stories and it's cool to tell other cops. again, I give credit to the sheriff in the book, and I'll give him credit again here, because he kind of pushed me, and he's like, man, I think people would be very interested in this, especially because it's a constant subject, right? And it's big in the media all the time, has been back since the stories in this book were going on. So that was probably my main fight, is am I good enough, and is it good enough, and will people actually pick it up and read it and enjoy it? And so yeah, I jumped in and wrote it, and I thought that was the hard part. Not at all.
That's just the beginning. The
Dude, I know.
it's like the writing, everybody's like, oh, writing's hard. Well, then they don't know about the editing, and then you got to pick the cover, and it's just it's wild.
Oh, it's one thing after the other. And I had a great team that came together. And this is, again, let's talk about social media and the connections you make. I leaned entirely on my network to help me get through this, and all of them stepped up. Everybody that I reached out to and said, hey, it's for editing, for instance, do you know anybody that edits books? Wow, I think I do. I know this person who knows this person. And through social media, through networking, I was connected. And Lori Lynn, if you're listening, she was fabulous. And then she turned me on to her team. So she does editing and publishing. And the cool thing was, everybody that I ran into, there were two things. They would say, we want to help you because we truly back law enforcement, and we want your stories out there. And then your story, because a lot of them had read my material, your story is so compelling that we're going out of our way to help you. And a lot of people did stuff for me that would have been very expensive in the industry. And they really helped me out, because, they knew that the story was good. They knew that it needed to be out there. And so I had a lot of people just step up and help out of the goodness of their heart that didn't have to do that. And that's the reason this came to fruition.
I love that, just how you constantly are giving other people the credit. So, if you pick up the book, or when you pick up the book, everybody has to realize it's not a self-serving book. It's not you just grandstanding about what you've done and the accomplishments that you have. It's really pointing at other people.
Yeah. And that's the weirdest thing. You said what was difficult in the beginning. So the difficult part was, thinking, is it good enough? And then that's the other part, is you don't want to give the appearance that, hey, look at me, I just want to show you how great I am. Because the only reason I've ever been good at anything is because I have other people around me helping with that mission. And so you concern yourself with that too. And it's very weird. As I told you, now I'm at the tail end of my career. I'm starting to look more into the private sector, into the business world. And you have to sell yourself, to people who don't know you and don't know what your background equals. And it's kind of weird to talk about yourself. And then, I'll go speak sometimes in different spots on the book, on leadership, whatever. And when you have them introduce you, you're like, oh my God, this is horrible, because they're sitting there telling other people how great you are while you sit there and watch the other people. And I feel like, God, this is so awful. I feel like such an idiot, but what I've found is I feel like that. And I think I'm my own worst critic. But then you talk to other people and they're like, oh my God, your background and stuff. Like, really? Like, that didn't sound horrible to you? Because it did to me. They're like, no, it's so cool. And so you I think I have a skewed perspective, and probably any person does when they're talking about themselves.
But it comes across, and it's definitely genuine. And we've just met, and I can tell that it's genuine, that you're uncomfortable when you're talking about the things that you've done and what you're capable of. And that's cool. I think that's really cool. And, we talked about the podcast is Pathways to Greatness. And so I like to ask people, since you talked about being good enough, what would you define greatness as for yourself?
Being who I was meant to be would be my definition of greatness. Because I think we're all designed to do something specific with our time while we're here. And I think a lot of people me included. The whole time I was growing up, and I've told people this several times, I was always told what I couldn't do and what I wasn't going to be. There's always people that will tell you that. And you see in the book how I grew up, where I grew up. I was a poor white boy growing up in a poor area. So you constantly have people telling you what you're not going to be, what you're not going to do because of your circumstances. And I think people believe that sometimes and they don't achieve the greatness that they can. So when you be who you were meant to be, you can achieve whatever you want.
How did you find that? Because it's a great saying, and I believe it. I'm curious how you found who you were meant to be.
Man, I don't even know. I think really for me, and not to get, super religious, but it was when I went back to church and I started to not focus on the stuff, and I focused more on relationships, and I focused more on a bigger good, and what we can do as humans for each other. And I think that's where I made a definitive turn in my life, and started focusing more. And of course, throughout my career, when I look back, I was always driven and I always wanted to do certain things, but I wanted to do those things because when I got into this career, I had a couple of goals, and I knew this. I had an old time cop tell me, look, man, the only thing you really have is your name. So when people say Matt Thomas, they're going to instantly think of something, and it's going to be good cop or crappy cop or lazy or hard charger, whatever. And I always wanted to have good associated with my name. I wanted to honor my name. And so that's what has always driven me. And then later in life, and as I got back to religion and got faith back in my life, I think that's where I flipped it even more and figured out that I was meant to do more and I was meant to be something more. And I started expanding my world, and it's been phenomenal.
That's awesome. And you don't have to apologize about talking about God, not with me.
No, I know, but
yeah,
people get turned off when you get too preachy, but I'm an absolute believer, and I don't hesitate to say that. I just don't want people to think I'm preaching at them.
Sure. I listened to a lesson last night. I was on the treadmill, and it was about more and wanting more. And it talked about that's God's plan for us to live a more abundant life. And once we do what you said, believe that, and then take action on how to do that, that's when things start to change. Did you see like almost an immediate trajectory change in your career once you went back to church?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you start focusing again on less worldly things and more of the divine plan, and you start treating things and people differently, situations differently, and I think it changes you as a person for the better. And so I wouldn't say that. I mean, my career has always kind of gone up, but when I got back to faith, I think my career got easier to handle, and I could navigate just everything easier, not only the career, but life itself. And like you said, with a wife of 29 years, we've had some rough goes, man. I've screwed up several times throughout our marriage and made mistakes. And it helped all of that, right? And one of the biggest things I think it helped was how I viewed my position as a father in the family setting. And that was a big piece of being who I was meant to be, because I figured out, I think in my younger, I know my younger self was more self-focused, even with kids and family. And when I got back to that, that's when you realize like it's not about you. It's much bigger than you. And if you screw it up, you don't get a second chance.
Yeah, no, that's that's so powerful. And I would agree 100%, as I had a big shift in my life about 5 years ago. And I grew up believing in God, wonderful, God-fearing parents. But like most people, you stray away and then you just get wrapped up in work and all these things. And finally got to that point where I realized how much I was missing, because I was either hiding. Actually, I know I was hiding from the things that I needed to face and what I needed to do. And so that's what I want people to hear, is that here's a guy that is, looking at the picture behind you, you're in full kit, you look bad as all get out, and yet you're still accepting that there's a greater power and that you need something else.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we're talking, wrapping it back into the whole social media networking thing. I have a friend, she works for Black Rifle Coffee, and Amy, how are you? We connected through social media, and I've helped her with some stuff, and she's helped me with some stuff. And we were talking via social media the other day because she was deciding, does she want to go public or not with her social media account. And I think my last line to her was, God designed us to be bold. And she's like, she said, I'm going public tomorrow.
Like, done. That was easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
No, that's
because she
awesome.
was kind of asking, like, I'm kind of scared, I don't know what to expect. Will people even follow me, or will my message resonate? Blah, blah, blah. So we had some of those back and forth discussions. And then that was my final statement to her. And then the next day she was public and running.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear. Well, you were talking about, and again, looking at your career, you've served in like mentoring roles, leadership, training roles. And when we look at people's pathways to greatness, now the average person is not going to have the same high stress environment that you operate in and your teams operate in. How have you helped people and new leaders manage the high stress situations that they're in and still maintain their composure and leadership?
Man, that is a multi-pronged answer. I think the biggest thing is, especially in this role, my mentoring style and how I get people there is to just walk with them. And you have to figure out what their journey is, right? And figure out where they're at, and how they think, how they function, and how they view things, and kind of, a lot of them, like, I know because I've worked over the years with them, and I can see. And that's the other thing is it's tough in this role, because in this role I'm constantly trying to mentor, mold, and help leaders that work with me. And sometimes I feel like they feel like I'm just nitpicking, like, hey, I see this or that, and if you make an adjustment here, it'll work better for you. But it's that kind of stuff. It's almost like a coach, right? You're standing back, you're looking at the playing field, and you're looking at your players, and you're like, oh, okay, I see this player over here is doing X, Y, and Z. So you work on that with them to make those adjustments so that they're better in those areas. And it's just constant adjustments like that, working with your leadership throughout. And then when you're with your like line level or younger cops, a lot of it is just talking with them and just seeing like where they're at and what they're thinking, and just talking them through some of the stuff you've done and seen, and giving them a little bit of advice. Because the other weird thing is that, having people say they look up to you is kind of weird, right? Especially when you're looking at other alpha male cops. That, especially now, I'm 50, and so this is a young man's game. So I'm at the old man end of the game, and you've got these young studs that are up and coming, and man, they're running and gunning 10 times better than I was when I was their age. And yet they want to hear from you, and they want to know your stories, and they want input from you. So it's just a constant evolution, a constant flow, and you would think it would get tiring, but that piece doesn't, because you see the rewards. You see these guys get better, and you see them just improve. And like I said, if I can teach somebody and then they become better than me, I feel like that's the ultimate achievement.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And how would you, if if you're coaching me through dealing with a high stress situation, pressure situation, and to maintain my composure, what were some of the tactics that you used to stay like in control in crazy situations?
For me to like me personally, when I never really lost control because I think because of the training and
Okay.
because of the inoculation of the career, um, that you go into work mode, and you'll hear cops say that all the time. When shit hits the fan, you just kind of go into work mode and you start dealing with problems, assessing, making decisions, assessing, making decisions, and pushing forward. Now, when you'll get people that'll vapor lock, or they'll have issues with that because the stress is overwhelming for them. And when you're in those spots, and I've been in a couple of those where I've actually had to physically grab one of my dudes, eye contact with him, and be like, breathe, bro, breathe. And, they'll all of a sudden they'll come to like, oh shit, okay. And you just talk them through it like, all right, let's breathe, get some good nose breath, and, exhale, and calm them down. And then once they calm down, because it just gets overwhelming to the senses, when you got a lot of crap going on around you. But you can pull them back in, and then like 9 times out of 10, they're refocused and you go back to work.
Now, would you say, I love what you said, and I hope people really heard it, so I'm going to repeat it, is that training was number one. So that's, you train, and you train like you fight, so you're ready. The other thing that people may have looked past was you expected it because it's part of the job. And you've probably heard the saying about Mike Tyson that everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yes. Great saying.
And it sounds like from your perspective is, you're going into that and you're going to get punched in the face. So you're training to how to react to that punch. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And most of us that consider ourselves good cops and want to be at the top of our game, you're constantly assessing yourself. It's all about introspect. Am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? And then you're allowing others to give you that same input. Like, hey, man, you made this mistake or that mistake. You might want to tighten that up. And so it's constant assessment. And then you're doing what ifs in your head. What if this happens? What will I do? What if that happens? And you have to do that in the downtime, because when it's time to go, you can't what if the situation. You just got to make decisions. And I think that's where a lot of people vapor lock is they haven't played those scenarios out in their head. And then this is not to sound badass, but because sometimes it can come across wrong, but you have to accept death. You have to understand that you are basically a dead man walking, and that allows you to function. If you're not worried about death, because I've worked with people who are constantly working under fear, the fear of this, the fear of that. And fear is what causes those vapor locks. And when shit's going sideways, I'm still fearful, but I've already got a plan, and I'm not letting that stop me. I'm fearful, but working through my plan and pushing through to the end goal. And I'm not worried about, because I've kind of accepted if I'm going to get shot in the face, ain't nothing stopping that. That's already predetermined. And so if that's my time, that's my time. But all the way up until that time, I'm going to give it hell. So just got to go.
Yeah. And I wish more people, civilians, would have that same process and mentality. I think they don't want to assess themselves, at least the people that I've encountered that have a lot of challenges. They're not willing to be honest with themselves, and they don't allow other people to give input. Have you encountered some of the same challenges?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We have the challenge. We're people, right? So cops, even top tier operators in the military have that same issue. Dudes like that have just mastered the art of the introspect and the adjustments on the fly, and sometimes it's in milliseconds. And even us, in the SWAT realm, same thing. you'll go into a room, you'll make an entry, and you'll realize my step was off, and I missed a cover on my partner, and you'll instantly tell yourself, like I know I made a mistake, and I'm not doing that in the next room, and so you'll make those adjustments on the fly, and then again having the ability to be called on it, and if nobody calls you on it, to call yourself and let everybody know, like, hey man, room 2, I screwed that up. I didn't cover your back properly, and won't let it happen again, and I'm going to make it right the next time, and yeah, I think people don't want to suck, right? so
That could be the name of your next book.
Yeah, yeah, but you have to admit when you do suck and just fix it. That's all you got to do, man. I mean, everybody has those moments where they suck. You just got to fix it and keep going.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. So I don't want to go without you being able to share something about the book, because I can't imagine the stuff that's in that book that people need to read.
Yeah, I was thinking about the book today because we were getting ready for this, and I started thinking, I was like, man, there's so many stories that people don't know from the book, but the book itself does give some good insight into, again, the untold fight that we were doing out there. And so how I kind of laid out the book, just for people's understanding, is when I wrote it, I'm a cop, right? So I write in chronological order, and I have to cover all my bases: who, what, when, where, why, how. So I kind of wrote it like a report from start to finish in chronological order. And that doesn't necessarily fit so well in the book reading world, because if you've ever been to court and read reports, that's kind of boring. There's juicy parts of it, but the overall reading of a report is like 0 out of 10 stars. And so had to mix it up, had to juice it up a little bit, and just flavor it up so that people are engaged. But how I laid it out is I knew I wanted to talk about the fight we had against the Mexican cartels, but I also wanted to lay the foundation of why I could talk about that stuff and how I knew what I knew. And so I start off with kind of my upbringing and background, because I grew up in a Mexican culture. I'm married to a Mexican. I've worked in the fields. I worked on a potato digger with the migrants, and I've just been involved in that world. So I wanted to lay that foundation so that people aren't like, who the hell is this white guy talking about the Mexican culture, right? So I did that in the beginning, and then I kind of went into the structure of the cartels as we deal with them, and kind of their belief system, their structure, their command, all that kind of stuff, and some of their logistics. And then I go into some of the operations that we actually did during this time period, which would have been kind of 07 to probably 2012 timeframe is what's in the book. And some of the unique operations we were doing that really, if you look at them, they're military operations, but they're being conducted by U.S. law enforcement on U.S. soil against a foreign enemy. And so all of that was unique. And that's what I dove into. And with the stories themselves, the one that cracks me up the most, I laughed when I was writing it because it was so funny when it happened. There's a story in there where we are chasing 2 stolen trucks that are loaded with dope. And one of them is identical to the undercover truck that I'm driving. So my truck and the bad guy truck look identical. And at some point we get mixed up in the desert. They're doing Brodies. We're chasing them. There's dust everywhere. You can't hardly see. And my truck and the other truck, not the one that looks like mine, but the other red one, we come face to face, and I can see the driver, and I make eye contact, and I can see on his face, he's thinking, how the fuck did this white guy get our truck? And that's as we pass each other. And so I just started laughing. I'm like, I just blew his mind.
It's like, that's not who was driving it when we left.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I can see it. You did a great job painting that picture. That was really good. Well, and I was able to read, I wasn't able to get it in time for our interview, but I was able to read on Amazon some of it. And I liked the tone that you write in, because it's very conversational, at least the way I read it. Right. It sounds like the way somebody would talk. And there's a lot of times that books come out and they're so poetic, and they're good to read, but you're like, okay, well, I can feel like now talking to you, I definitely
Right.
can tell that you wrote it the way you talk, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I wanted it to come across genuine. But when you write, you have to understand that you are painting a picture for somebody too. So you do have to keep that in mind while you're writing. And there would be times where I would write something and then I would go back and I would look at it and I'd be like, they're not going to know what the hell I'm talking about. So I gotta go back in and I've got to make adjustments and paint them a better picture. And it was odd because as a supervisor and even in a command level, it's one of the things that you're constantly teaching new cops is, hey, you've got to paint a picture for these people like a jury. You've got to paint a picture for them of what was going on at that scene. Now, body cams obviously change that a little bit because you get to watch the video a lot of times. But back in the day, we had to paint a picture for the jury, and I think that's kind of the methodology I used going into this.
Well, you did a good job, because the part that I was reading, you were talking about where you live and where the fences are and where the walls are, and how it's just created a funnel that just pushes everybody to your area. What would you say for the average listener that may not know who you are, or the only thing we know about the Mexican cartels is what we see on the news, which is, it is what it is, right?
Yeah. Right.
What would be something that you want to make sure that the listeners know, not just about what's going on, but also share some more about your book that would draw people in to want to buy it?
Well, I think the thing that they need to understand about the Mexican cartels are they are a 100% criminal organization. It's not like good families that are doing good things for communities. Because you'll see some of that propaganda, especially down in Mexico. The cartels taking toys to kids and throwing parties for poor towns and stuff like that. It's all propaganda. They are very, very violent and evil, and they have been corrupted over generations in the way they think and how they act and behave towards one another. And if you think about it, because again, I'm married to a Mexican, her family, they suffered the wrath of the cartels down in the on the other side of Texas. They were from that area down in Chihuahua, and they got extorted very heavily. They had family members murdered. They weren't allowed to have funerals for the family members that were murdered, or they would murder more family members. So just all kinds of crap like that goes on with these cartels, and they are all over the world. And I think the average US citizen needs to understand that a lot of people think this is just going on down here in the southwest border, that this is just the problem down here. But I am here to tell you, and this is 100% true, and there's facts to back it. The cartel is in every state in the union, and they are probably in every city in every state in the union. They have some type of connection because drugs flow throughout, and drugs are their cash crop, and now humans have become their cash crop. And so they've got a hold on the supply and the routing of that supply, which means that they own the US, right? They're all over the place. And they're very violent, and they don't care about their own culture, their own people. And so why would they care about the gringos up north? That's, people just need to understand what a threat it is to have them just kicking down our doors and doing what they're doing. And all the people talk about illegal immigration, and you really have to stop talking about that. Illegal immigration is a thing, but they try to bunch everything into illegal immigration: drugs, human trafficking, all that. That's not what it is. Illegal immigration is just what it says. It's people migrating here illegally to get a better life, essentially, right? What we have going on is a crime wave, and they are just flooding it, and they're using people also as feints, right? So let's flood this area with people, taxes all the resources, and then they run on the other side with all the dope and whatever else they're going to run up. So it's a huge cat and mouse game just going on. And again, you'll get insight of that whole game in the book, because the book kind of goes into detail on some of these chases we would do out in the middle of the desert. And just if you went out there and if you enjoy the beauty of the desert, I told my wife, I wish I could get that MIB flashy thing to just forget everything I actually know. But when you go look at the beauty of the Arizona desert, you can't look at it the same, because you know what's going on out there. And that's what the book does. It kind of gives you a view behind the curtain, and it's happening right in front of you and you don't even know it.
It's scary. I mean, it really is. And it's we and me and so many people, we don't want to believe it, but we
Right.
know, and talking to people like you, that it happens and it exists. And I'm grateful for what you do and what the other members of your team and the department do on a regular basis, because without that, it would just be a complete mayhem.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the men and women that are out there now, they're facing all the new challenges of technology. Technology is just, you know, it's gone crazy, which has made the whole game change, and made, we're always, you know, trying to play catch up and one step behind them, it seems. And you know, the cartels are a business. They factor in their losses. So a lot of times we know, and that's one of those things that kicks you in the gut sometimes, because you know, when you get a big load, a lot of times in the back of your mind, you're like, they already factored this loss in, and you know, they planned for it. So yeah, it can get disheartening sometimes, because you're like, what are we doing this for? But then you remember what you're actually doing it for, and without the fight, you know, everybody would just be getting run over.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, I know that this book is playing into part of your being who you were meant to be. And it's one of the twists and turns on your pathway to greatness as well. So in parting, what would you say to the listeners as they're on their pathway to greatness? What would you leave them some words of wisdom to live by?
Well, I think the best advice or words of wisdom I can give is this, and it's kind of a, I wouldn't say it's a cop thing, but cops rely on it heavily. Trust your gut and trust your instinct, because what that is that's actually the higher power directing you on your path. And a lot of times we discount that, or we don't listen to that, and we end up like the Israelites roaming around for 40 years. So when you have that little voice saying you should go for it, fucking go for it, because you know what, you got one life, man. And like I said, God designed us to be bold. So listen to the voice and be bold.
Man, that is awesome. That's a great way to live. So I'll be bold as well. So thank you, Matthew. And I again, thank you for sharing your story, for taking time away from your family to come and talk to me. So how can people find you?
I'm mostly active not mostly, it's pretty much solely active on Instagram, because I don't have time for a bunch of social media. So on Instagram, they can find me. My handle is deputy_one time. And you can, you know, follow me there. And then I also have a website. It's onetimenation.com. And that's where they can go find the book, the link to the book. And of course, it's on Amazon and, you know, all the other platforms.
Well, that is awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'll make sure I'll put everything in the notes, and just enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All
God
right.
bless.